Barry, how looks the meeting of science and religion in the time when you made the research in Turin, in Torino?
Okay. In 1978, when our team was coming together to plan our experiments and get the permission to come and examine the shroud, there was a big concern that the church or the king might want to control what we did. And many of the scientists were worried about this because many were not religious men who were wanting to do only good science, but did not want to deal with religious issues because the shroud was so controversial even then.
Yeah.
So one of the good things about 1978 was both the king and the authorities in Turin, the custodians, said that they would have no supervision of our work. They approved our tests. They stood back. They allowed us to keep the data that we gathered. This is the only reason I can sell or license the photographs, is because the king said we owned what data we collected. So, meaning I own these photographs, then now it belongs to our nonprofit, of course, but because I gave up the ownership to the nonprofit. But only because the king and the custodian said, no, we will not take your material. This is your material. And now the Vatican only recognizes the material from 1978 as official. Nothing after, nothing before.
Really?
Yes, this is amazing. And this is why I think, and in the future, if they do more testing, they will follow the same path
the same,
the team took. Experts from different disciplines, not all from one organization, different organizations, because if you have only one organization, it's possible to have agenda, you know, where you understand? But people from different organizations, impossible to have one agenda, only to do good science. So I'm very pleased that the people in Turin and the king understood that science must not have any interference. And so they gave us free hand to do the work that we had done. Remember, we documented everything in a plan in advance, 70 pages. So they recognized we were there to do only good science, not to make philosophic questions.
Just science.
Science. So I was very pleased, and I think in looking back now so many years ago, it showed that the king was a very wise man. To understand this and to say, no, you take the material, you make the photographs, you take the samples.
You are free. Your decision, I accept.
So I see that science and faith did this. You know, they came together and did not interfere with each other and allowed us the freedom to do good science.
Oh, that's great. And that was years before John Paul II ideas.
Well, that's true. Although remember, this is an interesting story I say in my lectures. When we examined the shroud in 1978, there was no pope.
No pope.
No pope.
This few days, no pope.
Yeah, he died the night before we came to Turin. And they elected John Paul on the 16th, and we finished our work on the 12th or the 13th. So he was elected a few days after we finished. So while we examined the shroud, there was no pope. And when I say this to the audience, they go, how is that possible? And I explain. So John Paul, we were in Torino when we watched the smoke on television. We watched the white smoke come up, and John Paul II was elected. So I was very close. I was
to John. But I'm afraid nobody from you knows who is Pope John Paul II, who is Karol Wojtyła.
Yes, of course, my brother Polish man, because when we were in Krakow, we stood underneath his window where his office was.
Fantastic.
with Mikhail.
Yeah.
Monica.
Yeah.
Mikhail was the driver, you know. So Mikhail took me to Krakow when we stood, and he said that window is where John Paul was the Pope, was the Archbishop.
Why only after 15 years you have been convinced that Shroud is authentic?
It took me a long time because remember when I began, I was a skeptic.
Yeah.
I had no emotional attachment to Jesus.
Nothing.
I knew of Jesus, but I was raised in an Orthodox home. So all I knew about Jesus was he was Jewish.
That's it. Yeah. It's true.
So because of this, though, so I was negative. I was skeptical. And I said publicly before we went, give us 5 minutes. We'll find the paint and the brush strokes, and we'll go home. No paint, no brush strokes. But still, there were many questions in my mind before I could accept this. And actually, it was 17 years, not 15.
Mm-hmm.
But in 1995, I only had one question left that no one had yet answered for me.
Yeah.
And that was about the blood still being red on the cloth. And I realized I was on the telephone with Alan Adler, Dr. Alan Adler, our blood chemist from our team, also Jewish. And I said this to him because he said he was becoming very convinced that the shroud was authentic. But I said, yes, but no one has explained to me why the blood on the shroud is still red.
No brown.
And, yeah, not brown or black. And Adler got very angry with me. He said, didn't you read my paper? And I said, 17 years earlier. And I said, well, yes, I read your paper. I said, but you are a chemist and I am a photographer.
Yeah.
So maybe I didn't understand. And he explained he found high content of bilirubin. This comes from the liver. It breaks down the cell walls of the red blood cells, releasing hemoglobin into the blood, which remains red forever. That was the last piece of the puzzle for me. Now, there's another reason why the blood may be red on the shroud, and that is that when they manufactured linen in the first century, in ancient times, they would wash, because linen is somewhat stiff, like cotton is very soft, linen is more stiff.
Yeah.
They would wash the linen in saponaria officinalis. Soap, it's called soapwort. It's a natural occurring from a plant, a detergent that softens, acts like a fabric softener. Also, and then they would wash and then air dry by evaporation, leaving a surface layer of saponaria officinalis. Saponaria officinalis also is a hemolytic agent, also breaks down the red cells.
So 2 reasons that
so
the
there
blood
are
is...
2 reasons. I didn't know of the second reason then, but now, of course, 5, 6, 7 years later, Ray Rogers presented this. So then I added this to my lectures, that there are 2 possible reasons, maybe both working together, maybe one or the other, we don't know for sure.
Yeah.
But this was the final explanation. I have a little cold, I'm sorry.
Proszę.
Anyway, once Adler told me this, and I understood it, I then realized there was nothing left for me to argue with. And at that moment, I realized that the shroud had to be the real
authentic.
thing.
Okay.
And this was 1995.
Okay. Thank you.
One more thing.
Yeah.
Shortly after that phone call, I got another phone call from a friend who said that the shroud was made by Leonardo da Vinci. And I thought he was joking. But no, he was serious. I asked him, where did you get this? He said he and his wife were at the grocery store, and in America at the grocery store where you pay, they have the tabloids to buy. the magazines, you know, the
yeah.
tabloids, like the, you know, the not the best newspaper.
Yeah.
And I said, where did you see this? He said, oh, we were at the grocery store and it was on one of the tabloids. And I realized at that moment that I was privileged. I had access to all this information. I had held the shroud in my own hands.
Yeah.
But the
touch
public,
shroud.
Yeah, but the public does not have this access. The public does not read scientific journals. So I got the idea while I was on the phone with my friend. I wrote on my desk on a manila envelope like this.
Yeah.
I wrote 4 words: consider building a website. And this is when I think God reached down and said, now here's the job. It was not just to make some photographs in 1978, but now you will bring this information to the world. So in January of 1996, Shroud.com went online.
Perfect. That's
a good story.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. That's fantastic story. I never heard it. You never first time.
So it all happened at one time. I became convinced of the shroud's authenticity, and within maybe a few days or a week, I got the idea to build Shroud.com.
Okay, and the last question.
Yes.
Display of shroud is a great event in the church and also for those who search the truth. What makes such a big interest in this event? What do you think?
It's a wonderful question. Gregos is a smart man.
Yeah.
Hello, Gregos. I know you will see this eventually. Hello, Gregos. Look, the shroud is unique in the world. There is only one object I can think of where science and faith come together on one piece of cloth. And it is a symbol of faith to 1 billion people in the world. It is an object of science to many other people who may not view it from a position of faith, but because modern science still cannot explain it, it is a mystery not just for religious people, but for people of science or just the general public, because science, with all the examination, has not yet been able to explain this image.
What's happened?
To make a duplicate of it.
Yeah.
So I think when you have science and faith and history and religion and archaeology and philosophy, all of them come together, this will always stimulate great interest, both from the pro-shroud people and also from the skeptics, because the shroud, I think, frightens the skeptics because it challenges their core beliefs. I mean, if you are an atheist and now you have this cloth that science cannot explain, this is a great challenge to an atheist to explain this. So they must call it a fake, because if they accept that it is not a fake, how can they be an atheist?
Yeah.
So I think that the interest is always going to be there. It's always going to be controversial. It will always stimulate the faithful to be deeper in their faith. It will also stimulate those who have doubts about their faith, perhaps to think about it more. And the way I see the shroud's importance, anything that makes us think about God is a good thing.
Thank you very much. So I hope we'll see in Turin, in Torino.